Jersey's own Zach Gelb.
Or maybe it's Pennsylvania. Anyhow, it's one of the two, I'm pretty sure.
The Zach Gelb Show continues
On Fox Sports 920, The Jersey.
4:16 is the time in the Princeton Orthopedic Associates studio. Zach Gelb Show, Fox Sports 920, The Jersey. 609-9199-D200 is the number if you want to hop on board. Flyers, we know they're not going to the postseason. The Rangers are going to the postseason, and their series will start tomorrow along with the Stanley Cup playoffs on Wednesday. And the Rangers will be playing the Montreal Canadiens in Montreal. So let's talk a little Flyers, let's talk a little Rangers, and some pucks with Beezer, John Vanbiesbrouck, who's kind enough to hop on board with us right now. John, appreciate a few minutes. Thanks for the time, and how are you?
Good to be with you. I'm doing fine.
Well, it's always great to talk to you, especially this time of the year. When you look back on your career, give me some of those memories that come back to mind when you hear the words Stanley Cup playoffs.
Well, you're thinking spring. That's the first thing. The weather starts to turn. There's a glimmer of hope, and you're just excited. And, you think matchups. First thing I think of was matchups all the time, who you can be facing. What are the guys going to be doing coming at you? How do they, form their habits and their tendencies? You're looking at all the little dynamics that play out, power play, penalty killing, those types of thoughts.
And you've been on some magical runs in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Everyone knows what you did with the Florida Panthers and then also the New York Rangers. When you're going on one of those runs and you end up in the Stanley Cup final like you did when you were with Florida, and you're winning all those games, and you know the passion that is in the Stanley Cup playoffs, it's like no other sport. Just describe what that feeling is like when you get so close and you're in that moment and you're winning the Eastern Conference and all that.
Yeah, you're really, trying to do exactly what you said there, is stay in the moment. I think that you're going to hear that a lot as the playoffs carry on. I think that, in today's day, distractions become a big thing. But back, you try to stay away from the press, trying to say the wrong thing so they don't put it up on their board before the game. And you're managing life, you're managing your family, you're managing all the things, but you're also trying to engage in the fervor, the excitement, what it means to be, in Philly, a Flyer, and trying to, think of and harness your thoughts on the good things that happened in Philadelphia during their heyday and try to become involved in that without getting too emotional about it. And, those are the types of things that you think about, and then you're trying to push away, like I said, a lot of the distractions and some of the things that you can't control, and then there's heavy, heavy emotion, as you know. So managing your emotions are really important.
We'll get to the Rangers in just a second because they'll be in the Stanley Cup playoffs, and they're looking to finally get Lundqvist's Stanley Cup to his resume, which has just been unbelievable. But let's first talk about the Flyers. This was a team at one point, John, as you know, they won 10 in a row, and people thought, they were going to be back in the postseason just like they were a year ago. And then ever since they won 10 in a row, this was a different hockey team. When you saw the Flyers this year, a group that made the postseason last year and didn't make it this year, what did you see go wrong with this 2016-2017 version of the Philadelphia Flyers?
Yeah, the time that you're talking about when they won the 10 in a row, they were really getting back into the mix. And, just like everybody else, as a fan, I was watching thinking they're going to do exactly that. They're going to be in the mix, and they're going to harness up on that energy, and then they're going to be in it until the end. And, you can't allude to one set thing, but, their D, they had the injuries to some of their top guys, Gostisbehere being one of them, out for a period of time. It seemed to be a mystery during the season. And then, you just have to manage through those types of things. But as you watch them play and they came out on the short end of the stick, and then you see collectively some of their players starting to add up big minuses, you started to wonder why. And, it's tough. A young, good head coach, you really thought, and you were kind of pulling for him. I'm a Hakstol kind of fan, and, you're kind of watching to see how they're going to manage, and it just didn't work out for them in the end.
You're a Hakstol fan, and I know last year they overachieved, and this year when you do that, people the following year expect you to back it up and be back in the postseason. But this fan base right now with Hakstol, you know how it is in Philadelphia. People are calling for him to be fired. Yeah. That's not going to be the case, John, and I believe he deserves another year. Yeah. But tell me what you like so much about Hakstol.
Well, I think, first of all, he's a good leader. I think that, the time that he spent at North Dakota, you can see what he left behind as they went on to win the NCAA championship a year ago. Denver just recently this year. But I like the fact that he's a leader and he can really communicate well to the young players today. When you have to recruit, it's a lot different than drafting. You have to talk to the families, understand dynamics. I think he pours into his players quite well. And at the same time, I think that, this style of play that they play kind of was a good Philly brand, physical, gritty. So I think he's a good match for Philly. It's just a matter of, in today's day, the game is played a little bit quicker, a little bit faster. You get guys nicked up and they're out longer. That's what comes with the speed. And then there's production. How do you get top production? And their top player in Voracek, 61 points this year. That's kind of like middle of the pack. You're in the range of like 30, and that's not going to cut it to be a top team. You got to have top producers, and I'm not taking anything away from his game, but production means so much in an 82-game season that there's only so many overtime shootouts you're going to win.
And a lot of people have put the Flyers superstars this year under a lot of pressure and a lot of heat, and they didn't live up to the expectation, like you were saying, with Voracek and then also Giroux. It gets you into that part when you look at how young some of these guys are, and then you have some of these veterans. It raises the question of, do you make some drastic changes? Do you anticipate maybe this offseason, and I know it's going to be difficult to trade Giroux, but maybe the Flyers try to break up this core?
Well, I don't know their chart well enough to know what they have coming. I know the young Provorov defenseman looks really solid, going to be a top guy. And, they got guys coming like that. And the question becomes identity-based more than it is anything. I like all their top-end guys, but then there comes, where they're situated in contracts. And you know how things are managed in the life of the cap. Sometimes you just can't keep everybody. And then you have another dynamic, which people aren't talking a lot about because they're so excited about the playoffs, and they're not talking about the expansion and, players that you're going to be able to keep versus the ones you have to expose. And, the Flyers have a lot of likable players to the new team coming in Las Vegas.
And with Las Vegas, and since you bring it up, it's an experiment, and we'll see. You also see in the NFL, the Raiders are going to be going to Vegas eventually as well in a few years. As a player, I bet you it'd probably be a fun place to play or a fun place to travel to. But what do you think about the NHL expanding to Las Vegas?
Well, I like expansion and what it does for the sport myself. We can see, I manage a team in the USHL, so we see players coming from Florida, Dallas, Arizona. You only have to look as far as the likely rookie of the year this year, and a young player there in Toronto. And, the thing is that when players start coming from Las Vegas, that you've grown the game. And I think that that's the measuring stick for hockey in the United States. We could have had two teams play in the World Cup. We could have had, probably three World Junior teams. There's more players coming from this country, and it's exciting to see because back when I played, we could hardly put together a team.
Beezer, John Vanbiesbrouck with us right now on the Zach Gelb Show. All right, let's get to the Rangers because their playoff run does start tomorrow night against the Montreal Canadiens in Montreal. This is a Rangers team. They have 102 points on paper, but as of late, they have not been playing great hockey, specifically in this last month. When you look at the Rangers, and this Metropolitan Division was sensational this year when the fourth-place team has 102 points. How do you view this Rangers club this year, John?
Well, I kind of like them. I think they're a little bit more balanced than people give them credit. But here's a team, I talked about production with the Flyers, but here's a team that their lead guy, Zuccarello, at 59 points. So that's 2 less than Philly's guys. So what does that tell you? Between Zuccarello, Miller, Stepan, they score by committee.
A lot of depth.
They get balanced. Yeah, they get balanced scoring from their back end, and I look at their back end being their strength. And Ryan McDonough is a superstar in my book. On the other end of the minuses, you got a guy that's a plus 20 on the season. And that to me is the secret sauce, where guys are always on the ice for positive outcomes. And you start looking at guys that nobody talks about who can get hot in the playoffs, and a guy like Michael Grabner has had a fantastic season, 27 goals. That's hard to do. And Chris Kreider, 28 goals. JT Miller, 22 goals. They're going to have to get some big-time scoring. So it takes the pressure off a guy like Rick Nash, who's a veteran guy that nobody talks about anymore. And this is a guy that if he gets hot, watch out. So I like guys that are tested, battle-tested, and can make, do some damage when there's not a lot of pressure on them.
With that experience, and you see the depth that the Rangers have, but since they've been cold, specifically in these last 10 games, with that experience, you think it makes it easier just to really flick this switch that, hey, look at how far the Rangers have been the last few years? I know they got out quickly last year, but in the previous years, they've gone on these long runs. Does it make it easier to just change that switch so quickly?
Well, I think they're going to draw from their past experiences. The thing is that everybody's going to point to Henrik Lundqvist, and the margin error in the playoffs is very small. But the guys that play the pivotal roles in front of him, that people don't talk about, that can flip the switch, are the guys that, how healthy is Dan Girardi, a tested warrior that's a plus player? Klein, who, these guys only played 60 of 80 games or so. Are they ready? Are they rested to go to battle and really give them the boost, the boost that they need from the back end? And then, I just see those kind of things adding up. A lot of other teams, they draw on the same guys every night, and there's a lot of wear and tear on them. And not to say the Rangers are any different, but this year they're going in not with all the fanfare, questioning Lundqvist, who, I think is going to be just fine. And then they have some added guys that are different up front. They were picked to win and to be a top team in Metropolitan in the East this year. And, most people would say the amount of points they got would probably add up to being a lead dog team. But then you're in with Washington and Pittsburgh, and those teams just seem to win all the time.
How much do you just attribute the way they played in the last 10, 15 games just to basically the Rangers knowing their fate? And also it's probably going to put them in a better spot if they were that 7th seed, being that 4th team in the Metropolitan, compared to having to play one of these Metropolitan teams in the first round.
Yeah, I think that, of course, if you talk to their inner workings or coaches and assistants, they'll be telling you, yeah, we would have loved to have more production and a better finish going in and all the rest of that. But look, I think that they're a team that's designed to win in the playoffs. And you know what? Who would think that if you want to take the attention off of New York, Toronto would be in and a team like Philly would be out? Nobody would ever pick that. But when you start to get in, everybody dials back to zeros and everything goes to zero again. Now everybody looks at the specific. Can their power play be good? How has their power play been in the last 10 games? Been a little shaky. How's their penalty killing been in the last 10 games? Been a little shaky. They just need to shore up some small details, not flip a huge switch where you can, you got to score 5 goals to win. It's a 2-1. It's going to be 2-1 every night. For a team to get blown out in the playoffs, any team that we're talking about is not going to happen. It's all going to be 2-1 games. The question is it going to be, decided by a silly offsides or not?
When you get to the review of all that, I can't stand that right
crazy.
now. It drives me nuts.
Crazy.
Crazy. Absolutely crazy. Beezer, before we let you run, I got 2 more for you. With this goalie matchup, doesn't get much better than this in the first round, Rangers and Canadians, right?
No, it doesn't get any better. And they're world class. That's all I can say is world class. Maybe the best matchup that we could have as far as goaltending in the Stanley Cup players. I know that, there's other goalies getting a lot of acclaim, but you're talking about two world-class guys. That's why it's going to be 2-1 every game, maybe 1-0, because they're so good. And, the fun part about it is when you see consistency in guys making it look easy. Price, the King, they both make it look easy.
And then finally, you all know the pressure's on Washington this time of the year because they always have this ridiculously absurd point totals. This year, 118 points entering the postseason. Is this the year that Ovechkin and company gets the monkey off their back, or do you think Washington is going to be disappointing for the Capitals fans once again?
Well, they're a really good team, and they're really well coached. And I think they have a lot more poise than people, give them credit for. And, Holtby factor. We're talking about Price. We're talking about Lundqvist. But Holtby's been every bit as good as any one of those guys, not only this year, but the last couple. The way he prepares, the way he, gets locked into the chamber for each game, I think is extraordinary. The big thing for Washington, is to get their power play really hot, because they have the best power play in the National Hockey League without a doubt. And if they're going to win, they're going to draw on their power play. I think that this is Washington's time to shine because their power play is so good, their goalie's so good, it's going to be tough to beat Washington.
Beezer, always love to talk to you, especially this time of the year. Thanks so much.
Thanks, buddy. Thanks for having me on.